Hey friends, welcome to Biblical Studies Today Sermon Spotlights. Preparing for John 13:21 through the end of the chapter for this Sunday, February 2nd. Here, when we think about preaching, I always like to think about literature, history, and theology, these three lenses to look at a particular passage. And here, we literarily are in the beginning of the latter half of John's Gospel. And we think about this passage, John 13, beginning with Jesus washing his disciples' feet, then telling them that he's giving them an example, and this is what they should do for one another. That idea carries through here to the very end of the chapter with Jesus speaking about love and this new commandment to love one another as I have loved you. This literary flow in John's Gospel leads right to thinking about theology. Jesus as the eternal Son taking up flesh in time to humans, loving these disciples, loving them to the end, John says, and here this new commandment that he sets out. And he sets that out in terms of their mission. By this, all will know you're my disciples. There's this flow of the Son's love for us and our love for one another, testifying to him and to his love for us. This theme theologically is based on the literary flow here of John's Gospel, and history is involved here because it's this love for one another that the disciples have that will be characteristic of their lives and their mission, but it will also give them community. They need each other because they are in the crosshairs of the Roman Empire now. Remember, the Sanhedrin has gathered and they are ready to hand Jesus over to do away with him. That is what we read at the end of John 11. And here we are now in John 13. This community of disciples is not just a missional community, it's a community of care for one another because they are going to need one another. In the midst of this dialogue here in John 13, Jesus interacts with Judas and Peter. And coming back to the idea of literature, these three, Jesus, Judas, and Peter here all together, the dialogue is so rich. And I hope to tease that out and notice this dialogue. In the midst of this dialogue, Jesus speaking about love and the love he has for the disciples and their love for one another. These will be the ideas that we follow through. And it's this idea of love for one another carries in so many places in the New Testament. I'm going to have to control myself not to mention Romans 13 and love and the importance of love. 1 Corinthians 13, a whole chapter on love, all the way through. Even if we just follow this idea of 13s, yes, Hebrews 13 begins with let brotherly love continue. For more sermon spotlights, go to biblicalstudiestoday.com. For information on biblical studies courses, preaching courses, go to mbts.edu. We'll see you next time.